So, a very good morning to all the distinguished panelists and participants. Thank you all for joining on time for this session. The topic of today's webinar is mental health and psychosocial support in disaster, psychological first aid for community survivors. So, before the briefing of the webinar, let me first welcome the patron of this webinar session, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, Executive Director, National Institute of Disaster Management. I would also like to welcome and introduce the convener of this webinar session, Professor Santosh Kumar, Faculty and Head, Governance, Policy, Planning and Inclusive DRR, National Institute of Disaster Management. Professor Santosh Kumar is an expert of disaster risk reduction, policy planning, and capacity development with more than 25 years of experience in different positions in the development, planning, and DRR sector. He holds a doctorate in economics and he studied gender and development in IDS Sussex, UK. And he has also received professional training in disaster risk management from Israel, tagged with international work exposure at the World Bank and intergovernmental body of SARC. He has also worked at state levels in different capacities in UP Academy of Administration, Nainital, and RIPA, Jaipur. He is an experienced hand in designing, planning, and implementing mitigation and long-term disaster recovery plan and projects. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So before introducing the guest speakers, let me give a brief about today's session. As we all know that disasters are complex global problem. It is an inevitable truth of our life. The disaster does not have physical consequences only, but it also encompasses the other domains such as psychological and psychosocial dimensions. Every year, individuals and communities are being affected by disasters which disrupts their mental health and well-being. The psychological effects of the disaster are more drastic among children, women, and dependently elderly population. After any sudden disaster or chronic disaster like the ongoing pandemic COVID-19, they become the most vulnerable population. Mental health issues in general have been considered as a neglected subject as it is considered as a stigmatized problem. Mental health issues caused by disasters is even more neglected area. The aftermath of disasters has a significant impact on the social, economic, and mental state of the victim community. Thus, in order to fulfill this gap, there is a need to understand this issue. The resurgence of ongoing pandemic COVID-19, especially the second wave, is affecting the mental health of many people severely as everyone is directly or indirectly affected by this disease. With this, I would like to welcome the panelists we have today who have the expertise in this field and their experience and work will surely enlighten our knowledge and understanding towards the issue of psychological effects on a community during and after the disaster. So first of all, I would like to welcome Dr. Subhashish Bhadra. Dr. Bhadra has done his MPhil and PhD in psychiatric social work from the National Institute of Mental Health and Neuroscience, Bangalore. He is currently working as an associate professor in Department of Social Work and head of Department of Sports Psychology at Central University of Rajasthan. Dr. Bhadra started his career in 2001 from intervention in Gujarat earthquake and subsequently worked in Gujarat conflict, tsunami, Kashmir earthquake, Uttarakhand disaster, and in various disaster affected areas in India and in other Asian countries like China, Japan, Indonesia, Myanmar. Through different organizations like Care India, American Red Cross, International Federation of Red Cross, Oxfam India, Action Aid, International Medical Corps. Dr. Bhadra is actively engaged in various disaster response programs, community-based interventions and lectures on disaster management issues in addition to providing support to different NGOs working on psychosocial support, youth development, livelihood interventions, community-based rehabilitation, inclusion of marginalized section, etc. In his credit, there are number of academic articles and book chapters and 2 books published by nationally and internationally reputed publishers. I welcome you, Dr. Subhashish Bhadra. Welcome, sir. So now I would like to introduce Dr. Prashanta Kumar Roy. Dr. Roy has done his MPhil in medical and social psychology from Central Institute of Psychiatry, Ranchi, and PhD from University of Calcutta. He is currently working as a faculty and head at Department of Clinical Psychology, Institute of Psychiatry, a Center of Excellence, Kolkata. In his credit, there are 37 research papers in international and national journals and books. He has 16 years of teaching experience. Dr. Roy is having disaster field experience since 2001 as volunteer and later as trainer for the community on psychological first aid on behalf of Medical Service Center, a voluntary organization as pro bono basis. He has received training of disaster mental health from Red Cross Society and American Psychological Association, International Psychological Union Taiwan, Minhans and Government of India 2017. Dr. Roy's areas of interest are cognitive therapy, hypnotherapy, community mental health, disaster mental health, and mountaineering. Welcome, sir. Now I would like to introduce and welcome Ms. Ilora Barik Shil. Mrs. Shill has a master's degree in social work and MPhil in psychiatric social work from National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Bangalore. She is an associate professor of psychiatric social work at the Institute of Psychiatry, Center of Excellence, Kolkata. Recently, she was also the head of Department of Psychiatric Social Work. She is associated with professional social work for the past 2 decades. Her areas of interest are mental health services, service-based research on strength-based social work practice, community mental health, psychosocial intervention in addiction and family therapy. She has a wide experience of working with the vulnerable groups of the community, including children in different circumstances, elderly people, adolescents and youth, pregnant and lactating mothers, child addicts, marginalized women, and differently abled people of the society. She was also actively involved in the study and training of the personnel related to JJ Act and rescue homes run by government and NGOs. She is a life member of the Indian Society of Professional Social Work and a governing body member of the Calcutta Samaritans. Welcome, ma'am. Now, I would like to introduce our last but not the least panelist, Dr. Atiq Ahmed. Dr. Atiq has done his master's in social work from Madras University, Chennai, and PhD in psychiatric social work from National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Bangalore. Post PhD, he has worked as postdoctoral research fellow in ICMR, funded by National Task Force on Migrant Health in Nimhans. Currently, he is working as assistant professor in Department of Social Work, Central University of Rajasthan. Dr. Atiq's area of interest are application of social work in mental health and chronic illness, neuropsycho-oncology, neurosurgical illness, neurotrauma, psychotrauma, chronic renal failure, substance abuse, health accessibility among rural and urban poor migrants, application of research and statistics in social work. Welcome, sir. So now I request Professor Santosh Kumar, Head GIDRR Division, National Institute of Disaster Management, to deliver his introductory remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ali. This is very, very elaborate introduction of mine as well as all they deserve, but I do not know about myself. But anyway, this was a very, very kind of important initiative which you have taken with Central University Rajasthan. And I see the alumni of NIMHANS, most of them, and working with the different areas. So this is very kind of a innovative initiatives in terms of when we talk about psychosocial care for the community. And the community is like why NIDM got into this is a different story. I'll let you know. But first of all, let me welcome all the distinguished panelists on behalf of the National Institute of Disaster Management. Uh, with some, we have a very old associate like Shubhashis Badra, and then we have Prashant Kumar Roy. Then we have Madam Elora and also Atiq Ahmed. They are working in their areas of excellence. And you have seen that his engagement of Subhash's engagement is in since Gujarat earthquake 2001, where we were really engaged at the kind of a helm of affairs. That time I was not with the National Institute of Disaster Management. That time I was working with the World Bank. And the World Bank was the in charge for the long-term recovery program. And we visited and we could see that what kind of a trauma which we had at the different levels. And many of the disasters which we see is talking about that mental trauma care counseling. Every time we keep recommending. So we thought at the National Institute of Disaster Management, we have a separate dedicated cell also, which works on the psychosocial care. And we have a great kind of a collaboration with the NIMHANS also. Together, we have developed different modules. Currently, also child-centric disaster risk management center of NIDM that is also working closely with NIMHANS for addressing children issues. When Ali took this charge of community center, and then we thought that how we can talk about community in the disaster risk management, victims, affected people, and responders. Every time we talk, but still in India, the integration of mental health has not been there with the physical health care when it comes to the disaster. Whenever disaster strikes, many a times you must have seen, it is the responders and the medical health professionals, they swing into action. And later, this mental health people go into that. So we thought that why not we have a kind of a constant hammering on this issue, and we also work with so that we can take up this at the policy level, where this could get integrated in the form of National Disaster Response Force, National State Disaster Response Force, and also other response agencies in the country. Currently, COVID-19 has given you a different dimension altogether. And when we talk about disaster at site, most of the disaster, whether Tsunami 2004 or Cyclone Ampan, Cyclone, which we are receiving last two cyclones, also three cyclones in the past during the COVID-19 time. Before that, also Cyclone Fani, Cyclone Gaza, Cyclone, all those cyclones, you take the name, and that was there in the kind of as a challenge for the community health and especially the mental health care. So what is happening that in these disaster, largely disaster at site or those in that area, people get affected. I remember when Gujarat, after the Gujarat earthquake, we seen in 1999 super cyclone Orissa. And there we went and we found that large number of people were traumatized, and they were homeless. They were not knowing where the better half of the family members are there, where children are there. So huge dislocation in 1999. And the kind of trauma, if you have a thermometer of temperature measuring, it will break. So that was the kind of a trauma. I am sure those indicators NIMHANS must have developed to understand the level of trauma in different individuals. So that was one case. The second scenario came, I really visited after this Nepal earthquake. That time I was heading SARC Disaster Management Center, and to take the important call, I had to visit the disaster at site. So we went to Kathmandu, and after 3-4 days, we found that large number of girl child came to us, and they were narrating their whole story of trauma. And few of them were menstruating age, and they were menstruating, and they were actually at shock that one is the earthquake, and second that they were first time experiencing this that they are mensurating. So both they understood as a kind of a trauma due to some injury. So they were thinking that whether they had some injury, internal injury, that is why they are profusely bleeding. So similar kind of a thing were there, and community, they were living in the camps. I remember visited many of the flood site in the post-disaster scenario, where the months together people are living in the camps, and those camps where that we I wrote an article long back and 10 by 10, where the family of 13 living in the 10 by 10 of the size of the tents, and they were all family members. They were having livestock with them also. So in that 10 by 10, that how the whole family were managing their lives. Daytime they were sleeping differently, night in the they were sleeping differently. They have a turn basis kind of a sleeping mechanism, and many of the psychiatrists, they talk about that if you don't sleep and then fatigue is there and living on the highways, your trauma would be entirely different. So how they were coping, and when the mass scale evacuation takes place, and people do not have the minimum basics provided. So they go into the trauma, the poverty is there, livelihood issue is there, and day-to-day kind of challenges are always there. So this is the scenario which we see and we come across. And many countries outside the world, it's not that only India is kind of a which get affected by various disasters. Many more countries, all the world is also like that. I was when in charge of the SAR, I could see in Afghanistan the similar kind of a problem. Bangladesh, similar kind of a problem. Bhutan, I found much better, and also Sri Lanka, I found much better than what we found in other countries. And India is a kind of a continent, so you can't compare. Maybe one state is doing exceptionally well in management of trauma, post-disaster trauma. But ideally, that how it should go as a kind of an integrated point, integrated force at the time of disaster. Whenever the disaster response force is going into action, how that mental trauma counseling team also go as a part of it, not the separate. In many of the countries, we found they move first, and then only after the people under the debris. Suppose an earthquake happened, and the search and rescue team are actually going for rescue. So what I could see, that it is the mental trauma counseling team first get in touch with the victims who are under the debris. They counsel there itself so that they find that somebody is there to take care of them. So inside the debris, you never know where you are going to survive or not if you are under the debris. And only later part they go into. I remember one Colonel Galilee was there, and he was sharing his experience while people under the debris, and he wanted to this rescue that person, take out from the debris, and he just inserted his hands, and that victim who was inside the debris, उन्होंने बस हाथ पकड़ लिया कस के और छोड़ नहीं रहे थे. So, and that took a lot of time to take out from there, and he had to manage. He was in charge of all rescue operation, and he was constantly. Then he called his team, and then the team persuaded the person who were inside that, because जो अंदर दबे हैं उनको तो लगता है यही life है. Probably somebody has come, and this is the one and the only kind of a support which they might. अगर ये चले जाएंगे तो पता नहीं क्या होगा. So that kind of a thing, that kind of a trauma. And in our Indian society, I come from Bihar, and when we were growing, if anybody is going to take treatment from the psychiatrists, so that's a very famous mental hospital was in Ranchi. So people used to call stigmatize that ye Ranchi returned. So Ranchi return is becomes as a stigma that you are not a part of the society, rather आप कुछ पागलपन आप में है. तो साइकेट्रिक केयर को कहते हैं तो वो पागल का डॉक्टर है. काइंड ऑफ एनालॉजी पीपल गिव. I don't know how much this had been kind of this had been addressed so far. Now people are taking care of that, and people are understanding those challenges. And in COVID-19, it's not a disaster affected at site. People who are living and their family members have lost their lives, succumbed to COVID-19. They are into trauma. My own elder brother succumbed to COVID-19 this year. So whole family is traumatized. And even though you are not affected directly, but the kind of scenario where people are struggling for oxygen in the bed, you are thinking that who could be the next victim? We do not know. So that kind of a trauma also went into the family. So collectively, different kind of a trauma in this kind of a disaster scenario where pandemic or this disaster challenges which we are facing. So that was leading to kind of this kind of intervention to understand, inform, educate people, sensitize people that this is not a kind of a pagal ka doctor or pagal ka koi treatment le rahe hain, but this is the need of the hour. Many of the Honorable Prime Minister is talking to the students many times when the exam, 12th exam is there. So just to ease them. So how to ease, provide that is many of the children's committed suicide, and one of the panelists in our webinar, she mentioned that don't say that children committed suicide because they were forced to commit suicide because of the situation was like that. It was so trauma was there. So how to prevent those kind of a scenario which is happening in our society, in our neighborhood, in our family, and our close. So this is how that we thought that let's plan together and bring them all together on the board जिनको हम कहते हैं पागल का डॉक्टर है या पागल का काउंसलर है and let them also say that this is not that what people have been thinking. This is different and it is very much needed and it's the need of the hour. Anybody get traumatized. So it's not that pagal ka doctor. So this kind of a myth has to be broken. And there we thought that how community and larger community engagement could be and how this could be available to larger community. Many people do not access these kind of facilities. Many people might not reach to Central University and reach to Subhashis and say that, sir, I am having this kind of a problem. So how that services can also reach out to the community and see that it's not confined to the NIMHANS or to the bigger central universities or the state universities or state medical colleges. How that can think, we can think differently with the challenges. Challenges is a now is a kind of a it's a fathomless. So how our services can go as a online or kind of other services which we can provide where people can access this. If I need any social psycho care, I was thinking that I'm how to come out with this trauma after my brother's death. Whom to contact? I do not know whom to contact, how to contact, whether I should contact Dr. Sekhar there or I to or other psychosocial specialists. So this is the problem for the larger number of people who are addressing this and are facing or going through. Many people do not know even that they have the psychosocial kind of the kind of indicators. So how they will get to know, or how the other family members will get to know that probably he requires some mental care counseling. So that kind of a simplified version needed for the community, so that we can also understand that if I'm finding those indicators, parameters, I'm just going through that and I'm ticking that and saying, oh, I'm into trauma, it means. So whether I should go for meditation or should I consult, like many of the doctors saying in COVID-19, 80% can be taken care at the home and only now 10% require clinical intervention. So maybe here also a psychosocial of same, we can say that 30% you do and 70% we will take care of, whatever the magnitude and intensity. But those kind of a simplified version, if any community members or any family members wish to understand, checking that indicators and we see that whether we require that kind of a count. Otherwise, it will gradually increase cumulative and then we will find no solution and finally जो कहते हैं कि ये पागल हो गया, psychiatric case हो गया. So that kind of a thing should be prevented with the intervention of psychosocial, especially in the post-trauma disaster care. And this happens when people lose their day-to-day life. They are into camps for longer period, and also they are lost at the many people we see that loss of livelihood. People are not in a position. Many of the middle class family and they many higher middle class family they are into trauma. Now we see that they are not able to provide children fees in their school. Somebody is studying in DPS in urban area. I'm telling you, or in many big schools. 1 year they could support family but now they are finding it difficult. So, and that is leading to kind of a trauma and also committing suicide. So, you know better, all experts are there. And I welcome once again all the distinguished delegates and participants who have joined for this particular and very important webinar. And I'm sure the resource person would Subhashish, Dr. Subhashish, Dr. Roy, and Dr. Atiq Ahmed and Madam Laura would provide certain kind of a guidelines or provide some solutions to the people who are listening to you and also to an idea which we can take it forward. So I would stop here, welcoming on behalf of the National Institute of Disaster Management and on behalf of Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal and my own team, uh, Ali Haider and me and the entire my team of NIDM. Welcome all the distinguished panelists and central universities for our program. Thank you very much. Ali, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for sharing such a precious field experience and practical issues which the community and the individuals face during a disaster and after the disaster. Thank you, sir. So now moving on, I would like to welcome Dr. Subhashish Bhadra, Associate Professor from Central University of Rajasthan, and request him to make us and participants understand about the concept of psychological first aid, how this first aid intervenes and helps in the treatment of mental health of the individual and community victims in context of disaster. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, can you just allow me to share?
Yes, sir, I have given you the right to share. You can.
Yes. Okay. So, good morning to all of you, and my sincere regards to NIDM and the entire team. And it is really a great opportunity to be here and talk what is the most essential component in the disaster psychosocial care and the disaster interventions. See, we need to understand that mental health is a very important component, and the intensity of the disasters are going to increase because we are seeing that the number, intensity, and its gravity is increasing. There are many reasons for that, but very clearly we know that there is reason of human intention and human inaction and human aggression. Lot of human inaction is one of the main reasons that the global warming and we are getting into much higher problem. The same way human aggression is the reason of war, terrorism, and those kinds of problems. So at every situation, human being is suffering. And the suffering core is the psychological issue. For any health dimension, if we see, the mental health is the core of it. When mental health functions, many other disabilities which are due to physical condition, we can overcome. So in that way, we need to understand the mental health is a very important component. Not going to any theory, not going to any knowledge which is really coming from the book. Let us talk very practically what we can do. We understand first aid. Many of us in our school days also learned first aid. So first aid is something, if there is a cut in the body, we need to give the first aid to ensure that the immediate bleeding is stopped. And if the immediate bleeding is stopped, the chance of healing is higher and the deterioration is less. So that is a very common physical first aid we do. And we know the first aider are not the doctors. The first aider can be a school student, can be a person who is trained, can be a person who can give the basic care and support. So that way we need to understand that the first aid is very, very essential for facilitating that healing to ensure that the initial distress is reduced. And that's why that also reduces the future disability. So if the care is given immediately, then the future disability is much less. So that's why first aid is very, very crucial and a basic training is enough. The same way the psychological first aid to talk about. It is about being available to someone. In COVID situation, being available is very, very important. Listening to them, ensures that there is a ventilation. Like it is the situation. If we take an analogy, a pressure cooker on a stove, till the time it doesn't make sound, there is a high chance that it will get blast. The same way our mind is. There is lot of pressure around because of the social situation, because of that condition. So we need to talk, ventilate out. And the pressure goes higher. There is when there is a loss, there is a trauma to the person, very individual trauma. Like the person is having a death in the family, having job loss, having self problem because of COVID. So these are the typical issues where the person gets again highly affected. But anyone who is living there in this situation of lockdown, limitations, inability to go out, makes us highly vulnerable. So in the psychological first aid, what is essential, what is important that we give confidence, we are trying to reduce the worries. That is most important. As we reduce the worries, we facilitate the better normal reactions. Because all the reactions of worries at this moment are called as normal reaction to an abnormal situation. Being worried is a very normal thing considering the situation. But if the worries continues, then the mental health situation impact the physical health conditions, and that creates the disability, and that creates the major problem. So that's why we need to ensure a normalization model, and that normalization model where people can be available, people can talk, people could listen, being together are very, very essential. So there is a need of immediate help which psychological first aid can give. And it is important that when we give the psychological first aid, what we do, like a physical first aid, when we go and try to clean the wound, the blood comes out. The same way the person talks, ventilates. And what happens is that the point of trauma, which is causing the distress, that loses its intensity. Let me give you an example. Like if we listen a joke for the first time, we laugh a lot. But if we listen the same joke 3 times, third time, we don't laugh because the joke have lost its ability to give the fun once we listen 3 times. The same happens for the point of trauma, which is causing stress. The stress which is causing disturbance. If we talk about it, the point of trauma reduces the negative feeling, emotions associated to it reduces. So we can think logically. That's why psychological first aid need to be given. The same way the first aid can be given with a little training, even to a school student, even to anybody, even to a youth. The same way psychological first aid is. With a simple training, with a simple understanding, people can work as a psychological first aider. So it is the volunteer, it is the Anganwadi worker, it is the SIG member, it is the school teacher, anybody who can be given training and awareness can be available to the people for the psychological first aid. So it can be provided by anybody. So very simple term. What is psychological first aid? It is a very basic practical support. It is a very practical support according to the need and according to the cultural situation and context. And it is a very much humanly support. And it is very much a situation where we are trying to respond to the fellow human being. It is also about assessing the immediate needs and trying to fulfill those needs. It is also connecting with available social support network. In a COVID situation, if somebody is suffering, then we need to see that what is the reason. Because of not having job, not having show, what immediate support? Everything cannot be met up. Once we give the immediate support, like it's a cycle, once we push a little, it starts moving. So that little tweaking is essential to come out from the trauma. And psychological first aid has that ability to do it. And psychological first aider can do it. So giving the trick that the cycles, the fan starts moving or the cycle start moving with little pulse of the paddle, and then it's gain the speed. So that is the psychological first aid. Initiate, allow, talk, be available, and then it connects. So we need to see how do we encourage that positive coping. And in certain cases, we need referral. Very less number of cases who need higher under mental health service when the distress continue, when the person's functional abilities do not come back to the normals. So we need to understand, so it is a means of immediate after the event. However, for the cases who have higher amount of distress, they require follow-up, they require long-term care. So biological disaster, the COVID situation is a biological disaster, and probably in 2008, NDMA has come out with a guideline of the biological disaster also. But we need to understand that the mental health guideline also has come up in 2009. So many things is available, but getting down into the community, pulling down to the community is very, very essential. And this biological disaster has a lot of mental health. So it is like mental health pandemic more than the COVID pandemic, the origin associated to it becoming or became a mental health pandemic. At least you have a data profile to show how many COVID cases, but we don't have any data profile to show how many is the mental health condition or how it is going back. So that way, it's a huge challenge. And there is no doubt that COVID had given a survival challenge. So it's a challenge, it's a survival challenge. And in any situation like this, there is a lot of hypersensitivity. Like in Gujarat, if little bit shaking happens, or if wind is going higher in Gujarat, in Odisha, people used to feel cyclone is coming. Or after the riot, if there is a cycle tire blast, people used to say the bomb blast has happened. So that is the kind of situation of hypersensitivity, because once the person experience the trauma, the situation, the origin, they are so much deep rooted that there is a tendency to look for those kind of evidences. Because looking into those kind of evidences is a matter of preparedness. The people try to be prepared. So people look for those kind of evidences and try to respond to it. So that's why that's become a problem. So once we give the psychological first aid and allow them to understand their own reactions in the body and mind, then people try to understand their situation and try to recover. And that is done through the psychological first aid. So if this condition persists for long, then it's become a health issue. It's become an illness. Like there are many studies by ICMR in Bhopal gas disaster. The people who are affected, they become very, very sick when they did not get immediate care, and their sickness was not psychological sickness. They developed the problem like high blood pressure, a lot of issues related to the cardiac problem, and then there are problems related to digestive problem, which has a definite connection to the exposure to the trauma due to gas. They did not inhale gas, but the trauma which went on, which they could not reflect out, that caused. So everybody is scared and scared about an unknown enemy. So there is an hypervigilance causing main issues where there is a need of psychological care and psychological first aid. So there is in social disintegration, and we need to see there is a lot of dichotomy. Somebody is trying to help. On the other hand, there is casualness, there is hopelessness. So we need to see that how do we merge and ensure that awareness, that helping attitude, being togetherness. And we also need to understand mental health doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is connected with the social realities where we stay. So if we create a social support mechanism within the available situation, it helps. And mental health situation depends on the past experience too, and the present realities too. So if we see that the past realities, the past experiences, there is definitely pre-existing vulnerabilities, poverty, disability, disease, adverse childhood experience, and the unstable social relationship, pre-existing mental health issues. So there are a lot of past experiences, past situation which increase the vulnerability. So what is being seen that the marginalized sections who are the vulnerable become highly vulnerable in post-disaster situation, and when there is a higher exposure. So there is an issue that there is an adversities in personal situation, family and community situation that increase a lot of problems. And in whole way, we see that the COVID has changed the individual life, family life, and the community. And if we know that how to provide the psychological first aid, giving support, being together, allowing person to talk, all this helps. And it helps 95 to 97% of people. And only 3 to 5% people require a long-term care and follow. So if we give that little push, it starts moving, and that is needed. So we need to ensure that how do we cope with this new normal, because we do not know actually whether we will have a post-COVID or we will have a life called post-adjusted or COVID-adjusted post-life. So we need to be prepared psychologically, socially with it. So what prevents us? What PFA does for us? What prevents us from the mental health adversities? It is being seen in different research that the people who are physically active, even before the COVID strike, and when they are affected by COVID, they recovered fast. Their illness was much less. So being physically active is very, very essential. The physically active people are less vulnerable. They cope better. They're more resilient and they are less impacted by the COVID. So we need to inbuild that habit of being physically active. Whether it is poor and in the higher socioeconomic strata, that activeness being yoga, meditation, what we say, I'll just focus a bit within the limited time. So exercise helps. A good sleep is very, very essential. 8 hours of sleep, because during that time, the body heals, the mind heals. So it creates the adequate positive neuron connections, which is definitely a neurological connect. And then the age-old tradition of yoga meditation, which is resurfacing, but that is most needed and it is being found, it helps. And we need to understand that loneliness is the biggest issue. So if we are trying to connect, if we are trying to facilitate that, it creates the social support network. There is a very important spiritual resource within us. Spirituality is not about religiosity. What do we do with religion? It's very different. Spirituality is finding a peace inside. Spirituality is about our emotional health, where it is connected with a superpower, a feeling being grateful to whomever we believe. So that creates a feeling of gratitude, a feeling of hope, a feeling of positivism. And it is being very much seen in case of illness, in case of HIV/AIDS, in case of long-term disease, in case of chronic disease, that the spiritual component, use of spiritual resources, help in healing. So we need to understand that how do we promote all these things through the psychological side. And we have indicators like what we use is called as self-reporting questionnaire, which is a very standard format given by WHO, where there are 20 points we can take and understand. If our score is more than 7, we can feel that we are finding difficulties, we need help. If we go more than 15 or 16, definitely we require help. Like, do I get adequate sleep? Do I have a headache? Do I feel hungry? So all these kind of very simple checklists which are given and which are essential at every moment for a self-assessment, for assessing to others, for understanding where the difficulties is coming and who are at higher risk. So who can change? We can change these reactions of the external world by changing how do we perceive the externals. How do we see the external situation? If we change the perception, it's change. And there are a lot of experiment is done about it. If I see the external world as very bad, I get a bad influence. If I see there is a change happening, there is a positivity coming up. So I try to be positive and I make a positive situation. So these are some very 7 techniques which are given in psychological first aid, which I say ventilation, active listening, being empathetic, encouraging social support, externalizing the interest, the person, what the person has an interest. If he can sing, can he sing again? If a person can draw, can he draw with the kids? So all these are essential in externalization of interest. Some amount of relaxation, meditation, yoga, and spiritual resources are very, very essential. This is a tool which we had developed and which is still relevant. Like the psychological first aid is ensuring safety, providing a safe environment, meeting immediate physical need. As I said, it does not work in back home. So you have to see what is possible to different situation, what is available, because government support, NGO support, community resources are available. So facilitating the linking between the families, identifying the needs, all these are essential. And these are very simple tools to say that you can help yourself. So there is a need of individual initiatives. Take the issue as a family issue. So how the family could decide the problem and take simple steps to walk forward. If the school fees are not coming, what best we can do ourselves. So looking into that, instead of taking the problem with the children's problem or with the job problem, when the problem become a family issue, family can take a decision, can share. So that is essential. And bringing that community resource at individual level, the different kind of relaxation, sharing, writing down the feelings are very, very crucial. So the reality and the PFA are the very, very, there is a reality where the PFA works and PFA works most. So we need to understand in the reality, there is different kind of people, different category of people. So looking at that vulnerability, we need to provide support. We need to reach out to them. But the service can be provided by anybody who is trained. And there are people who require active support. That is the 2 to 3% who might require referral. The people who are having grief, who have lost their family member, Dr. Proshant will talk. Or if there is difficulties with the child, so the child issues, Dr. Ilora will talk. So we'll see what are the long-term issues. But definitely some people will require. And there are people who need support and who can work as volunteer. And we have a lot of community resources. So we need to see, like we have NYK, we have youth group, we have SHG groups. So we need to see whether we can tap those resources. We can use those resources. We can allow them to be available into the community. And that helps to activate the available support system for the purpose of dealing with the problems and providing the psychological support. So these programs need to come to the at the ground. So at individual level, what actually is in nutshell, we can say that we need to look at how people can build an active life as a matter of routine, as a matter of habit, as a matter of practice, and how they can do it with the family and friend. So each one become an influencer for others. So we need to create that kind of positive vibes. That's called influencer. Like if you see the fashion influencer, the same way we need to create that psychosocial influencer into the community among the youth who can create and who can give to others, who can make others to follow. So that is very, very essential. And take a good sleep as an individual habit. And if that allow, that creates a lot of biological change. Talk, share, be connected, yoga, meditation, spirituality, writing experience, all this I talked are very, very essential components to build up at the individual level, which through PFA, through psychosocial support, we can work. And with the family, be with the family, have support, talk to each other, encourage empathy, share your feeling, ensure spatial care, ensure the gender distributed role, because the gender-based violence have increased. So we need to very clearly understand. And recently I was writing, still largely at nowhere we have looked how these issues are becoming very, very crucial and how do we control them. So we need to rethink that how the gender-based issues and the gender-based parity need to build up. Because what sir said, Santosh Kumar sir was saying, like the girls you have seen in Gujarat riot situation, the young girls started menstruating and it was continuing for long and they do not know what is happening. So at community level, we need to create that psychosocial volunteer, psychological first aider by using the resources of SHG, NYK, all these. We need to develop the support. We need to create that appropriate behavior, facilitate online support mechanism, whoever able to assess and develop that kind of digital volunteers, what I say. We need to promote the digital volunteer. We need to create the influencer, psychosocial influencer, and we need to create psychosocial digital volunteer who would help even an old person to fit in the COVID, can get the information, how to get the information. So this kind of practical support has to come up. So actually what we said, build back better we can do. And we evolve as a better human being, which become a post-traumatic growth. So by using our condition, by using our opportunities, the COVID has given us that opportunity to become a better human being, to build a better situation. This is overall a model. I'll not discuss it here. But as a whole, we need to connect the psychosocial support with mental health community, and other colleagues will talk about it. So thank you. Just I would say, to the signal of your body, listen to the signal of your body is very, very essential. They are essential to understand the soul, mind, and body. And if we respond to them, we can create a better understanding. So I conclude that stay calm and centered. We can create that within us. We can create the volunteer. We can influence. We can create the influencer, and we can create the digital volunteer by using the community resource for the purpose of psychosocial support. So we are in a position to deal with the problem, and we can create a better world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for such an elaborative presentation. It was very, you have put all the technical things in very simple way, so we can understand that. You have also provided the information about the psychological first aid, we, which we were not knowing before that. What is psychological first aid? Why it is necessary, and how can we provide the this first aid? You have also discussed the COVID in mental health relation, and how the physical activity is must to mitigate the impact, and the loneliness is the biggest issue. How spirituality can help us, and you have explained spirituality in very well manner. The psychosocial care techniques, that was a fantastic stuff. Sir, as two of our speakers, Santosa and you have talked, there is a question from our panel, from our participant, that we are listening around there in news and all around us that there could be the third wave of this COVID-19. So how we can judge the mental health of the school children in that scenario?
Very
If you
good.
can.
I think, Ali, we should take up the questions together, because Dr. Ilora is going to talk about the children, and she will focus and talk about it. What do you think? That we take up the questions at the end?
Yes, sir, we can. But if you
Yeah,
can
the
Yes.
answer
person
it now.
raised this question. What I would suggest, rather let this be so that their anxiety is taken care of, so that they can concentrate on the second presentation.
Yes.
If
Yes.
you have any question, but
Yes.
that
Yes. Please.
if they have raised this question and
Let
and
us go ahead with
anxiety,
it.
uh,
Thank
so
you.
you would like to answer?
Yes, definitely. So what I would say is that the third wave, which we have seen already, Maharashtra, 8,000 children are being affected. So we know that the third wave may come, and it is almost started appearing. So the school children will get affected. It is like a known feature. Now, when we know that the threat is known, till the time we did not have vaccine, we did not know how it is spreading. We had an unknown fear. Now we are in a situation where we know where is the enemy, and we have identified the enemy is like this. So if we know that it will come, and it is started coming, so we need to follow very simple thing like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5 basic things. So we have to understand that the child needs special care and protection. So we cannot expose the child. So from the very initial days, what is being said, that they keep the child as far as possible inside the home. If we are coming from outside, let us not get mixed with them. The person who has to go out and work outside, let him be segregated within the available limits of the social situation. So we have to follow it. And it is also being said that a very young child, hugging them, kissing them, being very close. If we are coming from outside, if we are regularly visiting outside, we should avoid that. We should stop that so it doesn't get spread. Second thing, that creating entertainment for the children within the situation. So there are a lot of online platforms. Beyond that, we as the caregiver, the person as a caregiver, need to understand the child has a definite need, because child doesn't understand the threat. Child doesn't understand or cannot perceive within the mental state what is the situation. So the child needs special care, need an explanation. So she can draw, she can talk, or he should be given chance to explain by writing. So we need to give the stories, we need to tell the songs, we need to show the pictures to understand how the threat is. So she or he, the child, become aware and take an adequate understanding what is expected from him or her, and the parents, caregiver understand what they should do. Third thing, what is being said is about nutrition, yoga, sleep. That has to be inbuilt. If we can build it up, we should be able to take it very clear. Fourth thing is being vigilant. So we have to be vigilant. If there is any situation of any reactions, we must be vigilant and ensure that we could prevent it there. Vigilant doesn't mean hyperactive. Vigilant means we are vigilant to take an action to prevent it. And the last aspect I would say is that let's not worry, but let's be prepared. So have the confidence the situation can be controlled. Situation has the lot of understanding now. So let's be confident on the science. Let's have the spiritual resource. Let's have understanding. So develop the scientific practice, develop the mental health practice, pull from the spiritual resource, and behave in your safety nets. So create the safety nets around you, around the child. So you are connected and maintain your safety situations. I hope to some extent it might have given some answer. Yes, Ali, you can take up the next question.
Yes, sir. So it was a nice answer, sir. Sir, this next question that how that there is a barrier because of the lockdown. How to interact with community in the times of COVID special lockdown? How can we
Yes.
can interact?
Yes. See, lockdown is there definitely. We need to understand, take care of the lockdown and the COVID protocol. No way we are supposed to break the lockdown. But we also understand what is possible within lockdown. In a village area, in an urban area. So now lockdown characters also have changed. So first of all, being available doesn't mean only physically present. Even giving a call and asking how are you, what is happening. So being connected digitally is the new platform which we need to use and activate. Like we have seen lot of digital volunteership in mobilizing plasma, in mobilizing oxygen, in mobilizing ambulance support. These are happening. So be connected wherever possible. Create the group, connect them, connect through one member, talk to others. So being connected wherever possible, do visit. If there is a big field, if there is a big place in the rural area, there is no data place usually. So if there is a common place, so bring them together, maintain physical distance, and you can talk, you can have yoga together, maintaining the distance, and being that togetherness helps a lot. Maintaining the COVID protocol. There is no question of breaking the COVID protocol wherever it is possible, because when you come to the nature, when you come to a green place, those kind of chemicals heals our body, and those natural situation called as a naturopathy, which helps us to reduce the stress. So we have to see what conditions they are, what condition we are, what is possible. Considering those limitations, the physical presence should be considered, or else digital platforms should be used. So I talked about digital volunteer. We need to create the digital volunteers more to get connected within us, and we can use the youth and others who have better digital knowledge and can work as better digital volunteers. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
You can invite the next speaker, Ali.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now I would like to invite Dr. Prashanta Roy, who is Associate Professor at Department of Clinical Psychology, Institute of Psychiatry, Kolkata, and request him to deliberate his expertise and experience on how the psychological intervention works to cure or treat the mental or emotional crunch with which many of us are living in the ongoing pandemic, COVID-19.
Okay.
Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Can you give me the share option?
Yes, sir. I have given you the right to share.
Please go ahead, Mr. Prashanji.
Is visible?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
sir.
visible.
Okay. Thank you, National Institute of Disaster Management, for planning this topic to discuss about the psychological perspectives related to pandemic mental health. And thank you considering me for this discussion as part of the panel. Uh, what Dr. Bhadra has discussed about the approach of psychological first aid. So I'm going beyond that. But before I start the discussion, let me focus on some of the stories. This is a story of Antara, who is a psychologist, young psychologist teaching in a school as a school counselor. And she lost her father in COVID around a month back. And what was happening even after the month, she was continuous in the denial mode. She was refusing to believe that father has died. If anybody was telling about any ritual related to the death of father, she was becoming very much abusive or violent towards that particular person. And there was evidence of regressive behavior. She was showing more clinging behavior, and her talking was more in a childish mode, was playing in some of the childhood toys. So this kind of regressive behavior was evident, and she was not even willing to talk to any of her friends who were psychologists. So this is one story. Let me go to the next story of Bunty. Banty. Banty is a researcher. He is doing his research in one of the IITs, and he had COVID 1 year back. And even after 1 year, he is continuously having sleep disturbance. He is getting intermittent wake up spell, and in the morning he doesn't feel fresh, and he is having occasional problem of breathlessness for a short period of time, with excessive fear that something bad might happen again to him. And he is also having frequent nightmares during his sleep. And because of all these things, he is not being able to focus on his research writing work. Now, this is story of Chitra. She is undergraduate college students, and she is part of a voluntary body who are working for the people affected by COVID or affected by lockdown as pro bono basis. However, due to some of the experience, he easily gets frustrated, irritated, and she was telling that if I am telling someone to follow this particular, now your husband is so sick, better to hospitalize him immediately. And she reported that the wife was telling, no, I want to wait for this night. At night it might be difficult. Let me see, maybe by tomorrow his breathing problem or his oxygen saturation level might have changed. So she feels extremely irritated, sometimes becomes very aggressive towards those people wherever she is going to provide her help. And all these things are creating a sleep disturbance in her, because all the thoughts are coming continuously in her mind. And she is telling like, I must be helping others at any cost. So these are three different scenarios that all of us who are working with the people with pandemic might have experienced, or maybe the family members are also experiencing similar kind of thing. People. Now, with this in the background, last year I conducted an online survey in West Bengal, and in this survey, around 1,000 people were there, and none of them had COVID during that time. And we tried to assess the kind of the traumatic impact they had. And in this traumatic impact, we found that around, forget about this data, I'm not getting into this detail, around 50% of the total population, I found that they had moderate to severe level of traumatic impact. Moderate to severe level of traumatic impact. But what is going to happen with this 50% of the people, as Dr. Bhadra was telling, that around 90 to 95% people might recover within 2 to 3 weeks, provided they get some kind of psychological first aid or the kind of support system that in India we are proud of. But there are some number of people. We found that around 10.3% of the population who didn't have COVID, they had extreme level of trauma reaction. And what can happen with these people? We need to focus on the entire 50%, and at the same time we need to have special attention for this particular 10% of the population, because they are vulnerable. They are vulnerable, and that vulnerability can amount to suffer from depressive disorder, anxiety disorders, panic disorders, even suicide, post-traumatic stress disorder. All those things happen. And some of the reports have already suggested that during any kind of pandemic in last previous year, like in 2003, even 100 years back during the Spanish flu, there was around 10% of the population who became more suicidal during this pandemic period. So we have to be quite careful about the warning signs, and if these particular warning signs are there for more than 2 weeks, then obviously the mental health professionals to be consulted immediately. And I'm not going into the details of the warning signs, but it includes sleep problems, significant weight loss, suicidal act. If there's suicidal act or suicidal intention or suicidal thought, better not to wait for 2 weeks. Immediately to consult the mental health professionals. And if there is increased use of alcohol or drug, or if the person is becoming violent or aggressive, all those things are warning signs. Now, what kind of psychological intervention we can think about other than psychological first aid? So, whosoever is the client, whosoever is the patient, whosoever is the sufferer of mental health issues, we need to primarily focus on the psychological first aid for all. Psychological first aid, and that includes the 5 essential elements, as Dr. Bhattara told. We need to focus on where the person is going to feel safe, whether with somebody the person is going to feel safe, whether in absence of somebody the person is going to feel safe. Mostly during this pandemic period, the person feels safe when he or she is with the other people. And we need to try to do something so that the person can calm down a bit. Maybe we can provide, if the face-to-face in hospital basis, we can provide some kind of some water so that the person might feel calm. And even in the digital basis or online basis, when we are trying to talk to the person, we can suggest the individual, okay, will you feel better if you take some water? Will you feel better if you keep one pillow with you, or maybe a teddy bear with you to hold on, so that you feel more calm and more comfortable? So this calming experience can be helpful. And connectedness is being already told. First connectedness is that your reactions are normal because the situation is abnormal. That is the first connectedness. Second connectedness, with whom you would like to stay, with whom you would like to share your experience, your thought. So that is second connectedness. And third connectedness, the kind of problem you are having, will you connect yourself with the helpline or the telecounseling modality? So this is third level of connectivity. And in all these situations, what happens many times when family members are providing kind of support, they give the suggestion and they expect that the person who is the sufferer is supposed to implement those suggestions. Here, one important point that we need to remember is that we need to enhance the self-efficacy of the individual, and we need to rely on the self-efficacy of the individual. We can give some kind of suggestion. I think probably if you do this, that would be better. But what is your opinion? What you would like to do? So the decision making, if you keep on the individual, that is always helpful. That will improve the self-esteem of the individual. And obviously, finally, we need to maintain the hope in the individual that this problem will be over maybe within 2 to 3 weeks, or maybe within a couple of few days. We are sure that things, the problem that started, that will not continue. So this kind of hope is always needed, so that there is a possibility of improvement or recovery. But what happens during grief? Grief is a normal phenomenon. All of us are having grief reactions when there is a loss of any significant member. And there are various aspects of grief. Though There are 7 stages I have highlighted here, but all persons might not experience all the stages, and sometimes those stages may come in a very haphazard way. But we have seen that many people, even during this pandemic particularly, the grief reaction is becoming more complicated, more difficult one. Reason might be this is unexpected, death is very much unexpected. Large number of people are dying, even in some of the families 2 or 3 people are dying. And the third aspect about is there is no closure after death. There are no rituals. Even many people are not unable to see and unable to do the funeral process. So all those are creating lots of shocking experience, and this shocking experience can and stay for few hours to a couple of days. That can be a normal phenomena. And many people are into denial mode that I discussed with the story of Antara, and that people are not accepting that is also a normal phenomena. And sometimes anger can be there. Anger can be associated with the hospital nursing staff, the doctor, even towards the family members, sometimes towards me. Why didn't I think before? So the anger is another phenomena, and the bargaining is another issue. Bargaining means sometimes accepting the death. Again, no, 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 no. Probably there was. I'm thinking in a very wrong way. How can I think that the person has died? No, this is not good. And then the depression appears in the individual, and with the depression the person start testing the realistic solutions, and the gradually acceptance happens. It can take 1 week, it can take uh, more than, around 1 month for some individual. But if it is going more than 3 weeks, then obviously we need to focus on that particular person, so that his or her grief experiences reduces. And for grief experience, we need to remember that uh, there would be some phases where person will be having more grief reaction, and there will be some phases of life where the person will have less grief reaction. And it is, and sometime during the holidays and during some particular days, the grief reaction would be more prominent. And this grief reaction to some extent can continue throughout the life. It doesn't mean that all the grief needs intervention. All the grief needs intervention. One thing that we need to focus on, grief is a normal phenomena, and there is no need to hurry up. Do need to put pressure on the individual that you come out of the grief immediately, then it would be good for you. No, we need to give the some kind of, there are individual differences. We need to give some time to help them with their own resilient capacity. Each and every individual is having some amount of resiliency. And some of the other things that we can do is in grief counseling, and the family members also can review what are the grief reactions in the thought, what kind of emotion the person is experiencing, what kind of behavioral reaction the person is having, and what kind of biological reaction, like how is the sleep, how is the energy level, how is the appetite. So these grief reactions we need to review by asking the individual, and then we can rebuild the relationship of the patient with the disease. What kind of relationship that particular person used to share, what are the things you liked in that particular person. So how will you evaluate the relationship? What kind of name you would like to give to the relationship? What are needs used to be fulfilled with that particular person? What are the things you didn't like about that particular person? What are the things the person didn't listen to you? So the both the positive aspect and the negative aspect of the relationship, we can ask to the person without forcing the person to accept the death. So that has been found to be quite helpful. And sometimes description of the sequence and consequences of the events which had happened just before, during, and after the death. Understanding of the entire process, the past, present, and the future of the death experience, that can be helpful in accepting the death, some people. But it may not be on the very first day, maybe sometimes on the second day or the third day, we can go for this sequencing of the event. And we can explore the associated feeling about that the person is not here, unable to see. There is a confusion that the person may not be living. So what kind of negative feelings the person is having? Maybe at later period, we can also explore some of the positive feelings. Yes, person start experiencing after 2 or 3 sessions, some kind of positive feeling associated with it. Maybe through remembering of some pleasant event with that particular person, some positive emotion might come up. So those things can be helpful. Consider possible ways of being involved with other people. What are the needs that used to be fulfilled through this particular person? Are there any other individual that to some extent those needs can be fulfilled? So this is another important issue to deal with grief. So the important is whether it's a loss of a person or a loss of a relationship. We need to communicate the relationship stays for the life. It is only the absence of the person, the physical absence of the person. And whether it's the loss of a person or the loss of the needs, mostly we'll find that our needs that used to be fulfilled to that particular person, we miss that particular issues prominently. Sometimes writing a grief letter can be helpful, and if you can write down addressing to the deceased person, and maybe we can leave that letter on the water to flow, that can be helpful. Getting some kind of support system during this grief period can be quite helpful. And again, some people again having difficulty in telling that, okay, one family member has died, how to communicate to the other member, that is breaking bad news. I might not be able to go to the detail of breaking bad news because of the time, but here we need to find a comfortable place where the person would be willing to talk. Then we need to assess the kind of perception the individual is having, kind of knowledge the individual having, that what kind of suffering that the diseased person had, what kind of difficulties you anticipated, what doctors told. So this kind of perception that we need to assess. Then we need to invite that particular person that we would like to discuss about the kind of suffering that particular person was having. Are you okay? Is it okay for you to discuss? Is it fine that we can discuss about the kind of problem you had? Once the person accepts the invitation, we try to give some kind of knowledge. What was the treatment? What was the symptoms? What was the diagnosis? All those knowledge we try to provide. And then the emotions comes up. We acknowledge the emotions. We facilitate the emotion. We allow the persons to show the emotion with empathy. And then we plan about what can be the next session, what are the things we need to focus, how many days the persons we need to talk to. So all those are part of breaking bad news. What are the other interventions for other problem, like breathing or muscle relaxation exercise can be helpful. Slow inhaling, then giving a pause, then slow exhaling. And while you are inhaling and exhaling, just be aware that your chest should not expand. It is your abdomen. You are relaxed. Your shoulders are relaxed and not tight. So slowly, maybe for 4 to 5 seconds, you inhale, then give a pause so that you are aware about that you are taking a deep breath, and then let it go slowly. If you can practice it for 5 to 10 minutes, that can be extremely helpful. Mindfulness means becoming aware about what is happening. Mindfulness of our daily activity whenever we are eating. If we can be mindful about the taste of the food, the texture of the food, the smell of the food, the color of the food. Even when you are taking bath, when the water is flowing on my body, the kind of experience, kind of sensation that I am having in my body, I can be mindful about it, or I can be mindful about the normal breathing that is going on, just being aware about it. Whatever time possible, 1 minute, 2 minutes, that can be extremely helpful. 3 minutes breathing space, it is having 3 components. It takes 3 minutes. First component is awareness. Sit in a comfortable posture, maybe on chair, with straight body in a dignified position, maybe with closing eyes, and just be aware about your body posture. Just be aware about the kind of thoughts you are having, kind of body sensation you are having, kind of emotion you are experiencing. After this awareness, then you gather. The gathering is anchoring. Where you are anchoring? You are anchoring your normal breathing. The breathing that is going on, just focus on the breathing. Just be observed when you are breathing in, what is happening, when you are breathing out, what is happening. After gathering for 1 minute, the third part is expanding. And then when you are breathing in and breathing out, what kind of experience you are having in your facial expression, in your other body parts. So that is expanding. It has been seen that if you practice the 3-minute breathing space 4 to 5 times daily, and along with whenever I'm having some emotional difficulty, thought related difficulty, as SOS, it can help in coping with the difficult situation. When there is a storm inside the sea, what the sailor do with the ship? He doesn't do nothing. He does nothing. He only throw the anchor in the ship. It doesn't stop the storm. It provides a kind of stability. So this anchoring or gathering is to provide the stability, not to get rid of the storm. If it is reducing the experience of storm, that is to be considered as bonus. There is panic control technique. People are experiencing a lot of panic attacks nowadays. And what they do, they try to inhale more and more so that they can get oxygen more. It doesn't happen. What has been seen that instead of inhaling, if they focus on exhaling slowly, just let the carbon dioxide move out, and the breathing will be in an automatic process. So through exhalation, many of them are able to control their panic strategy. Sleep hygiene is a technique where to maintain a particular time for sleep, wake up time, going to bed time. If the getting into sleep is taking longer time, it should not interfere with the wake up time. So it should be fixed. And then cognitive restructuring is come to many people will have some kind of irrational thought, irrational expectation. We can question them. What are the evidences? Why are you thinking this? Who told this about you? The person is telling probably that I'm going to die. But where from you got this information that you are going to die? How many people have told you that you are going to die? How much you believe that you are going to die? So the questioning this kind of expectations can be some kind of helpful to discover that my thought was not rational. And trauma focused approaches, there are various techniques. I'm not going into the detail of it. And for volunteers, self-care is one of the most important thing. Before I start going for volunteerism, we need to ask whether we are ready to help. And sometimes the friend is telling me, "कुछ चलो 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 help करते हैं, बहुत जरूरी है." And because my friend is telling I'm going to that, no, we need to ask whether I am ready to help. Are you connected with a group of organization for safety or coordination? That is important. अकेले अकेले हेल्प करने जाने में प्रॉब्लम ज्यादा होगा. Just be with an organization so that you feel more safe and connected. Second, during volunteerism, what are the things you can do? How can you stay physical and emotionally healthy? That you have to focus on. Proper nutritional food, no much gap in between food, and the sleep time should be proper. Again, you can practice some of the breathing exercises that can be helpful. How can you know your limits? That is important. Everybody cannot do everything. And volunteerism doesn't mean going beyond my capacity. Whatever your capacity is, communicate to your voluntary group and go by that. Otherwise, you are going to be the victim. Our expectations are rational. And see, what other person are going to do, that is under not our control. What I am going to do, that is under my control. So many people might not follow lots of things. Let us unconditionally, non-judgmentally accept them. Okay, whatever they are thinking based, they are doing. What can I do about it? Nothing. And how can you and your colleagues support one another? That is important. Whenever having some kind of emotional difficulty, share with your friends or peer members so that they can support each other. And after your volunteerism is over, how can you take time to rest, recover, and reflect? That is important issue of self-care, so that next time whenever you are going for volunteerism, you are more resilient, more modified, more organized. With this, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a descriptive presentation. Very wonderful presentation. You have narrated the story of Antara, Banji, and Chitra with the different situations and conditions. You have also discussed 5 essential elements to focus on. That is a safety, calming, connectedness, self-efficacy, and hope. You have also shared the everyday life experiences, the 6 steps of breaking bad news, and the self. You have also talked about the self-care is also necessary in helping others, so that you could not become a victim. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Moving on, I would like to welcome Dr. Atiq Ahmad. Assistant Professor, Department of Social Work, Central University of Rajasthan, and request him if he can tell how the ongoing pandemic COVID-19 is affecting the mental health of survivors and their teens, and what could be the long-term psychological effects of this ongoing pandemic COVID-19. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Can you allow me to share the PPT?
Yes, sir. Just a minute. Balaji, please make him presenter. Yes, sir. You are now presenter. You can.
Yes, yes. Are you able to see now?
Yes, sir. It's
Yes.
visible.
Yes, thank you. So good morning, one and all. Uh, uh, I thank the organizers to give me this opportunity to present my views on the COVID-19 disaster and how we can, understand what's happening right now and what can be a long-term effect. And at the end, I would also like to show or give my views on how we can overcome this thing at a larger level in a systematic way. Uh, I thank Dr. Subhashis Badra, my colleague, who has been able to introduce me to this group. And yes, so the topic which I'm going to talk is on impact of COVID-19 disaster on mental health of the survivors, the present and the way forward. So understanding the impact of COVID-19. Yeah. So COVID-19 as a disaster has impacted on the social structure of the communities. It has created an immense barrier on the usual functioning of the society. Psychological distress is common among the victims. Also with socio-economic distress, which is ongoing right now. Vast number of individuals and communities are affected by disaster, and it will have a tremendous impact on community functioning, health, mental health, and well-being, which we are already observing or witnessing. And there will be also an economic and social development which is already disrupted throughout the world. And the most impacted is the education system. So we are from education system, and the second most impacted is the health system, which has also interrupted as a terms of social development. So what happens when a disaster happens and there is a mental health and developing in developing countries, it is seen that they are more prone to disasters or hazards due to the various challenges like poverty, lack of resources, lack of educational opportunities, poor infrastructure, and lack of trained manpower, lack of awareness and knowledge of disaster mental health. Though this disaster, we have been seeing it for almost 1 year, and it may continue for some more time, maybe months together. So already we have seen that there is a lack of educational opportunities, job opportunities. We have infrastructure which is unable to manage the demands of the health of the people around, and the lack of trained manpower to look for the knowledge of disaster, and as well as the mental health in the disaster. So now, I would say that this COVID-19 is a typical disaster. Now, what happens in a disaster, as we have seen, there has been hurricane, cyclone, earthquakes, floods, etc. What happens there in such kind of natural disasters is that there are houses are disrupted, whereas here the houses are safe, and it's like completely opposite. Okay, so and lifestyle changes have occurred, though the infrastructure which we have is intact, like the roads, the transportation, etc., which is intact, but then it is non-functional. And even if it is functional, we are unable to use it because of the lockdown situation, where we are not allowed to go out and things like that. Our freedom of movement is restricted, and the most impacted dimension in this disaster, in this typical disaster, is the income generation and the health, okay, and the social life of individuals and communities. So though these are the aspects which promote resilience and coping and overcoming the situation, but those situations like, in this typical disaster, these situations are impacted right now. So, so what happens? Mental health and disasters in India, we have seen that mental health issues in general have been considered as a neglected subject, especially as in India, as it is considered as a stigmatized problem in some places. Still, it is not like, spoken. People do not approach. They don't take it as it is. Okay, mental health issues are caused by disasters are even more neglected area in India. Though now for past 2 decades or so, at state and central administration level, efforts are made to mainstream mental health needs. It was seen after the tsunami that a lot of effort was taken up around in and around India, where disaster mental health and issues with related to that, the psychological first aid which was required were provided in a systematic way. So learnings from that has helped us to look into what can be done in the present situation. So generally, the disasters are measured by the cost of social and economic damage. Okay, this is what generally happens, but there is no comparison to the emotional suffering a person undergoes during and post disaster. Of course, emotional suffering for a person is unique. We cannot compare it to any person, but then still, it's not much looked after as a team effort when considered to the social and economic damage which is being carried out. And since this is a intangible aspect, like, we cannot just touch it, reach it, and people do not come forward to explain all such things, it goes under the pages, or it's not like, frequently spoken or discussed or looked into. So what happens in a disaster, the psychosocial consequences, we see that the psychiatric illnesses are very few, okay, and though looking at the COVID-19, there may be a chances that psychiatric illness may also be increasing. The behavior change is seen as little bit higher or more than the psychiatric illnesses. And looking at the COVID-19, that vast communities have had a different setup, that people are forced to stay back at home, and which they were not doing it, because staying back at home was, you know, was not common, because many of them engage into different activities, education or job, etc. And homes were used only mostly for retiring and refreshing and again engaging into. But then here, what is happening is that we are all forced to stay back at home. So there are changes, like, we have to adopt changes. So the behavior of people would certainly will be impacted. The fear and distress response, though in the first lockdown was not seen much, but then in the second lockdown or the second wave, the fear and distress response is alarmingly increased. Okay, what happens is the psychological footprint in a disaster, the size of the psychological footprint is greatly exceeds the size of the medical footprint. Okay, so this is why we are here to discuss on what are the impacts of, what are the possible impacts of COVID-19. So let's look at the previous disasters, what has occurred, though references have been taken from disasters studies, researchers which have carried on, the cyclone, the earthquake, etc. So it's a summary which I am presenting here. So mental health outcomes developed various psychological symptoms such as severe stress after the traumatic experience, uncontrollable feelings of grief and sadness for a prolonged period of time, substance dependency, adjustment problems which affects the proper functioning of the individual as well as the community, resulting in family conflicts. The last point is more applicable in COVID-19 due to the situation we are living in present. Okay. The most commonly reported problems were persistent grief, a state of shock and fear, maladjustment and dysfunctionality. Several victims were diagnosed with mental disorders comprising of the symptoms such as avoiding a specific situation with a fear of being rejected or humiliated, a state of constant sadness and uncertainties, failing to understand the cause and response causes and reasons behind the grief, fear of social and socializing, and persistently avoiding social situations. These are the lessons which we have learned from previous disasters, and it is applicable here also. The psychological and behavioral symptoms observed were unnecessary fear, a state of suspiciousness, paranoia, obsessed thoughts. Okay, obsessed thoughts. I would like to specially talk here about obsessed thoughts. That what we are presently living in situation is where we are made to constantly look at sanitizing our hands. Okay, so this is going to create a lot of problem maybe in future also, that many people might develop a habit of cleaning their hands even after this particular disaster would have gone, or the COVID-19 situation would have surpassed. Even after that, there may be a chances that people may become habitual to obsessed I mean cleaning of their hands, and which may result in obsessive compulsive kind of disorders. Severe mood swings and forgetfulness is what another thing which is commonly seen in disasters, that after the disaster where people have lack of sleep, guilt, loss of interest in various activities which they used to do previously, which were more engaging and more learning and fruitful. And probably people may not engage because we are almost 1 year we have not engaged into physical activities. Our children have not engaged into physical activities, so probably there will be a loss of interest in physical activities like sports, etc., which might have to be inculcated again after this particular impact. The fear of encountering situations, self-blame, suicidal ideation, and consistent worry about future. Previously, I mean, last year we did a study on people, youth who were involved in isolating themselves due to the COVID-19, and they were mostly in secluded situations where they had to stay back alone in their in a house. So what we found that they had a lot of suicidal ideations and worries about their self and health, because during those days the disaster, I mean COVID-19 was not understood properly, and they lived in a continuous worry that what will happen to me if I get the COVID-19 illness. Okay, so what will happen if I become ill and though I have kept in isolation? And since they were not in touch with family members or friends because of the physical contact, the thoughts were more disturbing to them, because entire day they have to think over it rather than engaging into some meaningful activities which they used to do. Okay, so the a few days back, one of our students engaged herself in collecting uh, information from youth for her MSW research about, like, what are are they consistently worried about future? So 60% of youth who have already responded that they are consistently worried about their future. They are looking for job perspectives. They are not aware where they will go and how job will opportunities will come and how they will be able to support their family and build their future. So long-term care is needed, and the long-term care was needed for the psychological problems which resulted from disabilities. This is based on the observations from previous studies, previous disasters, and followed study. So the disabilities, uncertainties of future, broken social units, and rehabilitation issues. The victims who had direct and indirect experiences of disaster showed prolonged behavioral and cognitive symptoms for which psychological rehabilitation was needed. So, what is expected impact of COVID-19? A specific expected impact is that loss of daily routine, which has already happened, and probably this may not return to normalcy very soon. because unlockdown situation is going on, but then looking at the infrastructure, the opportunities, the education system, which is not yet open and may take long time to reopen and return to normalcy. So the loss of daily routine is already present. The loss of resources which used to let the life go on. Okay, this is also not there. Okay, and I don't know how long it might take for building up these kind of resources. Lack of control over one's own possessions and loss of social support. So people are saying that I do have so many things which I can use. For example, their own motorcycle or a cycle which they can use for physical activity, but they cannot right now because there is a restrictions which have been imposed. And loss of social support, though it is available through telephonic conversations, but then the family, the friends, and the relatives, okay, those extended families, they are also in similar situation. So extending social support to them is becoming difficult. Okay, deviation from normal life is already impacting the all the victims who are survivors of this, and it may be extended for another few more months. So the impact can be seen not right now, maybe because people are coping to the situation, understanding that the situation demands our behavior to be in such situation, in such way, but then maybe looking at how things would uh, come up again after the normalcy returns. um, Probably the social support, the friendship, and the peer support, which is there, may not return back in the similar way which was happening, like use of peer group and going to hanging arounds or recreation activities which were there. Maybe we are going to see different changes in such kind of activities, which might require us to look into, um, how to develop without any much of impact on this kind of situation for future concerns of the younger generation of people. The impact is also associated with elevated levels of acute psychological distress in previous disasters. So, looking at specifically how COVID-19 is impacting, there is bereavement or death in the family. So, almost many of the families would have faced this situation. So, there is a grief and depression. Already, previous speaker spoke about what might be looking into, that people are unable to do the last rites of their families. Okay, so it happened in many places that they are unable to do the last rites of their families in the way their religious and tradition demands. So there will be a grief and depression, and also a feeling of guilt which will be setting in among them, that we could have done better for the family, or we could have done better for my mother or son or a daughter. Okay, so lockdown and isolation as an event is impacting on anxiety, depression, exacerbation of existing psychotic symptoms, because many of the people are unable to go back to the clinics to follow up with their mental health providers and psychiatrists to take up medicines. It was difficult in we have seen that in previous lockdown, when the hospitals, psychiatric hospitals, were not yet open. So, so there is, the already existing psychotic symptoms might have become more more. Increase in substance use and other addictions can also be seen, and there is always an educational impact. So, fear of potential economic impact as an event is looking at it's going to have there is going to be an anxiety, and also people right now might have been already setting up into a depressive episodes, where they might be thinking that they have lost their business, they have lost their just imagine those people who were street vendors, okay, and small time sellers who used to be on the platforms or the shops, where they have to bear the so many costs, including the rent for their shop, electricity bill, etc. So, looking at the situation, already they would have been depressed, and anxiety will be there that what might come up when this lockdown will open, when we will go for again earning all these things. So adversely affected personal relationships, like including domestic violence, can be one of the event in this, and like anxiety, depression, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders, can be seen in a near future, which has projected, and like medium to long impacts of this ICU syndrome. After hospitalization, people might face anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Bereavement can be prolonged traumatic grief, complicated grief. It can turn up into a complicated grief. Okay, psychological impact of frontline staffs, already those who have day in and day out are engaged in looking after the patients. They may have they experience PTSD. Actual economic impact, unemployment, job, which I already explained previously. So I will not say that. The long-term impacts are already there. Yeah. So what are the symptoms? Like, how to identify all these things are happening or not? How to identify this, and how to look into what can be done for overcoming this mental health issue. So the symptoms which are observable will be decreased appetite, digestion issues, vomiting, constipation, diarrhea, sleep disorders, exaggerated startle responses, which can be seen in children as well as in adults, irritability, post-traumatic stress disorders. Okay. Symptoms which we might need to explore to understand whether the impact is there is like, we have to look at the fear and anxiety. It can only happen only when we discuss, we talk to the survivors and understand from their level what kind of uh, symptoms are there. Yeah, Dr. Badra already spoke about SRQ. Okay, the self-reporting questionnaire, which is 20 items, which can be quickly assessed about this fear and anxiety. If he was talking about the caseness of 7 and above, the score is 7 and above. Yes, all these symptoms can be seen in that. So the fear, anxiety, increased hostility with siblings, somatic complaints which can be explored, school problems among the children, social withdrawal among the youth and adult, decreased interest in peers, hobbies, impact on academic performance, all these things which we can explore and see that whether the survivors are affected with this particular disaster. There are also like expected changes need to be observed. There are children, which is in general population, also in children and general population. Changes in
Could
school
you please make
performance.
it
Yes,
short as we are running out of time?
right. So what I'll do is I will skip on this, and I will go with what is like done. Okay, what can be done is we need psychological first aid, provision of psychosocial support, building coping and resilience. These are the three things. Psychological first aid, already Dr. Bhadra has spoken. Provision of psychosocial support, which is required. So skipping on all this, I'll just go to this. Yeah. Okay. So this is like International Federation of Red Cross, and they have like given this model where the normalcy is there, the impact happens, impact has a stage, then after that relief, recovery and development, and then again normalcy has to return. So this stage where relief, recovery and development, we need to intervene as mental health workers. Okay, what people need to do is, we need to create mental health workers, volunteers who can, we need to train them, required to provide support in terms of active listening, understanding, assurance of strengths available within them, promote resiliency and active uh, care and positive coping. So I'm just giving you some thought over it, like, who can be involved. Short-term training programs to health workers to identify psychosocial issues and implement referral services to designated psychosocial centers, PC, etc. Involvement of NGOs and teachers in schools need to be identified. Uh, Involving hospitals or health centers to conduct camps in promoting uh, psychosocial support in surrounding communities. Colleges and university students can be trained through NSS, and Red Ribbon clubs can be sent to the nearby communities to explore the providing the psychosocial support. CSR centers in industrial setups can take up this to extend support to workers as well as surrounding communities. And ASHA workers are there, self-help groups are there, and youth clubs are there who can be trained, and mental health can be done with them. And there are also like children clubs which can be made, the where older children can take care of the younger children, identifying that the problems are there, and they can bring to the notice of healthcare workers. Religious institutions can be involved, and we can also disseminate the information through involving celebrities, social media, and also like we can make short videos for resilience coping information which can be disseminated over the social media. So these are all things which we can do to build a resilient community which can respond to crisis in ways that strengthen community bonds, resources, and community capacity to cope. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It was a very elaborative presentation. Moving on to our last panelist, Ms. Ilora Barik-Shil, Associate Professor, Psychiatric Social Work, Institute of Psychiatry. I request her to focus on the psychological condition of a vulnerable section of community, that is the children, women, and elderly people, how COVID-19 is affecting the mental health of the vulnerable section of the society. Over to you, ma'am.
Can you, sharing at your level? I'm unable. Yeah, okay, I did. Thank you.
Please allow me to share.
Yes, ma'am. Balaji, please make her the presenter. Yes, ma'am. Now you can present.
Is it visible? Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It is visible.
Do it full screen. Yeah.
Yeah. My topic is children, women, and the elderly challenges during the pandemic. Okay. Since I am dealing with the children, before I go into this, I would like to share a story. There was a man who was very rich, and he was a Muslim man. One day he wanted to come to the for prayer. So when he came to the mosque, he came in his big BMW and he just parked the BMW and he walked to inside the mosque, just leaving his sandal outside. So when he went inside, he prayed, he thanked the Lord for everything he has got in his life, his position, his status, everything. And when he came out, he saw that his sandals were missing. So he was very upset. He immediately, his concern was he had to walk in this barefooted to his BMW. So what he did was he was praying to God and he was telling God, how could you do this? You know, I am such a respected person in the society and I have to walk till my BMW now in my bare feet. When he was saying this, he suddenly saw a man coming out of the mosque. He was literally on his knees and he was using his hands to come out of the mosque. He had a radiant smile on his face. So he went to this man and he asked, What makes you smile? This is so hot, scorching heat, and you are smiling and you are using your hands to come out. I really don't know. How can you smile? The man replied, I am happy because I was able to come here to God's home. I am happy because I am healthy still today. I am happy because I have a nice family and I am going back to my family now. I am happy because I stay in plastic shanties and I don't stay on the pavement, and I am not totally wet in the downpours or I am sweating in the scorching heat. And lastly, I am happy because I know you are the person who is going to now drop me at my home because God has sent you to me. The man was shocked because that was his lesson. He picked up this man, took him to his car, and dropped him at his residence. So, my topic is, we are all talking about the disaster, and my topic is the way you focus on your life, the positive attitude towards life. Okay. Now I will give you an alarming feature. There are about 2.2 million children in the world who constitute approximately 28% of the world's population. We all know the most accepted modus operandi in this pandemic is isolation and social distancing strategies. There has been innumerable studies which has indicated that compared to adults, this pandemic may continue to have increased long-term adverse consequences on children and adolescents. A study proved that the quarantined children experience greater psychological distress than the non-quarantined children. 68.5% had worry, 66.11% had helplessness, and 61.98% had fear. In this pandemic, children experience disturbed sleep, nightmares, poor appetite, agitation, inattention, separation-related anxiety, irritability, clinging behavior. They express lower levels of effect, not being able to play outdoors, not meeting friends, and not engaging in the in-person school activities. Due to prolonged confinement at home, children's increased use of internet and social media predisposed them to use internet compulsively, access objectionable content, and also increased their vulnerability for getting bullied or abused. Now we talk about the special needs. They also encountered lots and lots of challenges during the pandemic. Confinement in one place increased their hyperactivity. Now, when we also talk about the underprivileged children, they were more vulnerable to depression, anxiety, suicide, exploitation, and high dropout rates. Isn't it alarming? All the research which shows all the negatives. Now, let's talk about the positives. Like the man who said a different realization of the life. He didn't have anything, but he had everything because he had that positive outlook to life. So, let's do this pandemic planning. Have we ever thought this parents' physical presence, this undivided positive attention and reassurance is a blessing for our children? Let us focus on that. Increased awareness of the children about the pandemic only through age-appropriate authorized organizations like WHO, UNICEF, that will increase. How many of our children have this awareness about the surroundings? They are always into the book, but because of this pandemic, they have got this awareness. They are actually reading the reports of UNICEF and WHO. To alleviate the anxiety of the children, let us monitor. Let us give them the news, but let it be monitored and let it be encouraged. We are inculcating a very good habit in our children to go into the news. Parents can be the best role model for the children. We need to focus here. that we need to be the role models because we are at home and we can be the best role models for our children. Have we ever thought children have become most responsible, most accountable, and most structured because they are getting up, they are opening the computer, they are sitting in front of them, they are doing the class. Please go back before the pandemic and think you are running after them with your tiffin, you are running after them with your water bottle. Do you do it now? We have forgotten to see these positive things in our life. These are the positives which I want to focus. We are exploring their creative pursuits. We are sitting with them. Our creativity is being increased. Their creativity is being increased. They are drawing with us. They are singing with us. Have you ever seen the sky? Have you ever seen a sunrise? Have you ever seen a sun like going into the west? No, but now we are doing this. These are the positives and we need to focus on this because that is mental health. Teachers, we a lot of survey on the children because my child is into a school and I interact with her and her friends and the parents. Teachers are into more creative online academic and non-academic sessions, making the classes more and more interactive. Children love to do that. They are being given projects, they are doing it in the computer, they are sending it. We always focus, they are in the computer, they are this, they are having, but if we just shift our focus and focus on this, we will see there are so positive things which we are just overlooking because of the pandemic. More focus on the pro-social behavior, emphasizing human virtues like empathy and patience. Do you know how empathetic they are now? Please speak to your children in the community. They are so empathetic. They have the patience. They all ask, when will the school open? When will he go to school? Yes, they are missing their school. That is their second home. But they have learned to be empathetic. They have learned to be patient. And we can help them to understand that social distancing is not equivalent to emotional distancing. What do we have to do as the mental health professionals? Coordinated and innovative mental health care delivery with children, parents, teachers, school counselors, community volunteers, NGOs, police, and everyone. We have to motivate them to do this innovative mental health care system for them. We are already into this teleconsultation facility for the needy. Recognition of the physical manifestations of the stress, emotional health problems in the children, and planned intervention for the same. Identification of the predisposing and precipitating factors associated with the child's current manifestations. Why is the child doing this? Where is the predisposing factor? Let us explore. It is not only the pandemic. There are other things also. I am coming home. I am sanitizing. What impression I am putting on my child? My mother is worried. My mother is tensed. Developing stronger networks and partnerships with the mental health professionals. That is another role where we have to play. Now, we all talk about this pandemic. I would just like to share one essay from a child who was asked to write about Corona. Teacher asked the students and the child wrote, Corona is a big Chinese festival celebrated by both young and old all over the world. During this festival, schools, markets, churches, etc. are closed and exams are cancelled. Everybody wears masks during this festival. It is the time when every school-going children gets a smartphone as a gift from their parents. During this festival, daddies learn cooking, washing, and cleaning, while mummies and children spend their time with mobile phones. I love Corona festival very much. See, this is a child's realization. A child who has been asked, don't we think the child is more talented than us? Yes, because the child is not thinking about the pandemic. The child is thinking what the child has got. And because we are so tensed, because we are so stressed, of course, we really need those. But my focus is, can we just shift and look at this part also? I can also give lots research on women and elderly, but I will not go into that. I will just focus on the challenges of the women and the elderly during the pandemic. Lots and lots of misinformation are there that are not unreliable, that are not incomprehensible. And there are fake rumors. If you do this, you will not get this. If you eat this, you will not get this. If you do this, this will not happen. So those are the misinformation. There is well-being and mental health. There are depression. This has already been talked by all my three distinguished panelists. And they have talked about depression. They have talked about stress-related disorders. They have talked about panic, substance abuse, low immune system. Yes, these are the challenges. There is nutritional vulnerability. There is malnutrition. There is disruption of necessary food supply. There is shortage of adequate materials. There is, of course, economic vulnerability. There is loss of job. There is no job. There is financial constraints. There is violence and exploitation. Of course, there is discrimination. There is gender inequalities. We have lots and lots of research on battering and physical violence. But what should be our focus on? Our focus should be on the community. It shouldn't be the service delivery. It should be the community-based approach. Why? Let me explain. Service delivery is reactive, but community-based approach is proactive. Service delivery is needs-driven, but community-based approach is the core problem-driven. Service delivery has minimum participation. Community-based approach has the highest participation. In service delivery, we do the top-down approach, but in community-based approach, we have the bottom-up approach. Service delivery is a one approach. Community-based approach is constantly reinventing approaches. In West Bengal, we are all worried about the second wave about the corona. But last week, we were all worried about the cyclone Yash. So we are every week, we are constantly reinventing approaches because that is the community approach. Service delivery creates dependency, but the community-based approach, the power shifts to the community. There is a community ownership. Let us empower our community and they will take care. There have been lots of questions. What will happen? The third wave is coming. What will happen? The children will go. What will happen? What is the mental health of the teachers? Let us not focus on those. Enough, we have focused. Let us now focus on the positives because we need to give a better environment to our surroundings. Service delivery is static, but community-based approach is adaptive as the situation changes. Service delivery, there is low training needs, but in the community-based approach, we have the high training needs because we have to focus on the ownership of the community. Now, what should be our approach to our disaster preparedness? That is the community-based approach, involvement of the community volunteers. It should be culturally sensitive. Correct information dissemination should be there. We should enhance our social support system. That is the main thing. We can be in isolation, we can be quarantined, but we can always have this connection, this mental connection. Why isolate them? Why discriminate them? Why have this stigma? Let us actually take them. Let us have this mental connection with everyone, and we all will overcome it because I believe we can overcome it. Strengthening the mental health care centers and the rehabilitation centers, because people should not feel that they are left alone. In your community, you have this rehabilitation center. In your community, you have this mental health professional. Call them up and they are there to help you. Institutionalization of the psychosocial care services along with the available infrastructure in the community. We will give the psychosocial care, but we will use the community infrastructure. So that will be much more approachable. There should be continuous collaboration and coordination with the different stakeholders. Since I'm from the Institute of Psychiatry, we have actually done community-based approach with children during the pandemic. These are the people these are the professionals who are into the field, working with the children, helping them to learn how to sanitize your hands, how to use the COVID protocols. So this is the approach, community-based approach. This is with the women, the community-based approach with the women from the Institute of Psychiatry. This is with the different stakeholders during the pandemic. This is an awareness program, and this is, in a nutshell, my presentation.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It was very interactive presentation. As we are out of time, so we can't take many questions, but we can take a few. So there is a question from a student. How is COVID affecting the mental health and studies of the students studying in higher classes in a positive way? If any of the panelists want to answer it.
Okay, just let me, with the looking at the time constant, let me just quickly give an outcome that yes, the students have a lot of positive outcome. Like, what is first positive outcome is that students become very responsible. What Dr. Ilora has already said, that they become responsible because it is not driven by the teacher. They have to be proactive to learn. So what we have seen, that the good student become good. But the challenge is that the student who are not so good, who are below average, is facing real difficulties. They are not able to come up. So the good students are doing much better, but the below average, who needs teachers push little more, who are not able to take up, is having problem. Another, they are at home, comfortable situations. So the people who have the comfort at home, have a separate room, they are doing good. But on the other hand, the students for the first time got a separate bed in a hostel, doesn't have that. So those kinds of students who have those problems are really facing very difficult, because there is a joint family, cannot get a real space to study like in higher education, so getting problem. Third aspect, I would say there are a lot of lab-based course. A student has to do it, a lot of looking into it and then trying out. So the student who is able to afford, who is able to do it with some other connection, is able to do it. But there are many students who are unable to afford. So I see that digital divide has come up. The digital divide is making the people who are able to get it doing better. So you need to rethink that the people, the students who are unable to get the services, how to reach out to them. But as a whole positive, I said these three aspects, we see that proactiveness, doing it, everything is increasing. One danger I would say is the digital dependency, which is also coming in different research. The student surfing the restricted site because they have got for the first time, particularly the adolescent student of 9th and 10th children, when parents are uneducated, unable to monitor what the child is doing, are getting into those kind of digital addictive risks. So we have risk, but still these positivities which are coming up are definitely need to be nurtured and sustained for future. They become much more digitally advanced. Any other panelist can respond. Thank you.
If anyone wants to add something in this, any other
Yeah, I just want to say that
Nothing much to add
a
to
lot of
that.
self-learning is happening with the students, and though we used to see that peer learning, like weaker student being getting information from a better student, has but then self-learning, they have to find out their own resources and learn. That is happening quite a lot. Yes, sir. Thank you.
thank you, sir. So we are moving to the concluding session. So I would like to invite again Professor Santosh Kumar for his short concluding remarks, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. It was a wonderful session listening to everyone. And a lot of solutions have been suggested, what have been practiced out before the COVID and after the COVID, which is when there was a slash and then the second wave came, and the concern for the third wave as well. NIDM is also having a working group, and where you can contribute on this how to prepare for the third wave, and especially in relation to the children's care. And in the third wave, what is the possibilities of kind of likely to affected children, and how these could be, what kind of a strategy which we can suggest that each of the state government and the community can take. One is the suggestion for the government, another could be for the community, and those community institutions can come into a kind of a forefront and take care of that, as all of you have spoken about that, and the various initiatives which have been very successful during that time. And some tools which I flagged in the beginning, that what are the essential tools which you think is important to understand the trauma care, and how the habit and behavior could be a kind of a positive story was shared, that how children they are looking at as a kind of a, when they are writing essays in their school. And many of times we are thinking pandemic, but many a times it is also thought as a kind of a festival. So understanding the minds, young minds, is much more important, their engagement of COVID-19. In our neighborhood also, we find that children are, the moment they get, even if the smallest of the kind of opportunity to come out and interact, their peer group, and they are playing and everything. So one that probably we need to understand in this kind of trauma care, that what is the likelihood of infection rate amongst the children in the third wave. And during the first wave and the second wave, we were of the view that children will not be much of a career kind of a thing, but some studies said that they are potential career. But disease will not be a kind of a very serious. And two of the cases which were brought from Maharashtra, large number of children got affected, and also other states also. There, the doctors are saying that although large number, 10% of the children got affected in COVID-19, but the severity index was much less, and so hospital care was not there. So that also protects parents also going into trauma, and also the children going into the trauma. So how we can draw these positive stories for building our own capacity mentally, that how mentally we can get alert, which you people have beautifully narrated through case studies, and that was brought in. Nobody went out, and they don't have opportunities, and many a times they become orphans. Children are also becoming orphans. This particular COVID wave 2 has been the example of kind of uh, children getting orphans. So taking these two lessons, and also the case study which was also presented by Professor Rao, and then further elaborated by Mr. Ahmed, when the first presentation was made by Mr. Subasis, Professor Subasis. So when we combine all together the learning, which we say that that it has to be given top priority, the mental health care, number one. And this cannot be negated, and it should be brought in the forefront for the preparing for the third wave, and also for any other disasters which we are likely to face. One example came that during, from West Bengal, that during the COVID-19, there was also a kind of a disaster. So in West Bengal, in Orissa, and in Gujarat, in Mumbai. So this kind of examples are coming, which is a kind of a cascading impact of disasters. One, that communities are affected by pandemic. The other is community are also getting affected by the disaster which is occurring due to natural activities. And the third is that poverty and other challenges which are there. So what we say that it multiplies. So mental well-being depends on many factors, and in what factors the people are positioned into. So there the suggestions which have been offered by all the four distinguished panelists would be very, very useful for us in taking this input. I'm sure that you would be sharing your PowerPoint presentation. And even if you are having some problem in sharing that PowerPoint, you can share your content, which we can use in the kind of the other report. And this report, or the workshop of this report, will go to the working group report. And there we can bring in those issues what you have flagged. So, and the questions which have been asked by the participants in the beginning of this webinar, and which will be addressed by all the distinguished speakers. So I'm grateful to all of you and the kind of presentations and the kind of good learning and a very kind of a thinking that you have given a very positive environment, that in how in this positivity the mental state and trauma could be taken care of, whether it's a wave 1 or wave 2 or wave 3 and subsequent waves, or maybe any other disaster signal. We need to prepare, and if we are prepared, the challenges are and the impact would be reduced to minimum. So I express my gratitude to all of you and thank you very much for one that being with us, coordinating with us, and making your views, sharing your views with the larger audience. And for this, we have definitely benefited. So my team, Mr. Ali Haider, our Executive Director, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, and all the technical team who is working behind. So I extend my heartfelt thanks to them. And also, we are grateful to the participants who are there and attended this program. Without them, it would not have been a very, very successful program. So I just close here. If Ali has to say something, then he can say. But on behalf of NIDM, once again, I extend my gratitude to all of you. Thank you very much to the Central University, Rajasthan. Thank you very much. And also our resource person from Kolkata, she brought the major point from. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your concluding. Thank you, everyone. It has been a wonderful session. As a formal vote of thanks, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, Executive Director of National Institute of Disaster Management. I would also like to extend my sincere gratitude to Professor Santosh Kumar for his guidance for the success of this webinar. And I would also like to thank to all the guest speakers, Dr. Shubhashis Bhadra, Dr. Prashant Roy, Ms. Ilora Barikshil, and Dr. Atiq Ahmed. We are very glad that you could take out your precious time and shared with us your experience and precious knowledge you have. At the end, I would like to thank all the participants for showing interest and being with us throughout. With this, we would like to conclude the session. Stay safe, stay healthy, all of you. Thank you all.
The story of BMW. Thank you.